Hello, everyone. Welcome to Personalization Outbreak Podcast number 15. In today's episode, we'll talk about how organizations are being compelled to evolve their talent management practices in today's more personalized world as they compete for global talent. Our guest, Eric Miller, will be one of our 30 thought leaders to be featured at our upcoming Leadership in the Age of Personalization virtual summit on October 28th, 29th, and 30th. In fact, Eric will be featured on day 2, October 29th, where he will address the urgency to reinvent talent management. Each day of the summit will focus on a different sector: healthcare, corporate America, and higher education, always aiming on the intersection between them as they must seek much more interconnectedness than ever before. The summit will be hosted by Fairfield University College of Arts and Sciences in Connecticut and streamed by Lightspeed VT Studios in Las Vegas, Nevada, where I'll be connecting live and moderating conversations with speakers from all over the country. You can learn more about the summit and register for free thanks to our sponsors at 2020summit.ageofpersonalization.com. Now, Eric Miller is the Vice President, Global Talent Operations at Viacom CBS and has spent the last 25 years of his career riding the waves of change exclusively in the HR space. Now, with my co-host Scott Lacey, we will discuss why personalization is demanding corporations to rethink their approach to talent and why 2020 is becoming a pivotal point for this transformation. Let's get started. You are listening to Personalization Outbreak, a podcast about the collapse of traditional corporate standards in today's more personalized world. I'm Glenn Yopes. I'm a leadership strategist, author, contributor to Forbes, and founder of the Leadership in the Age of Personalization movement. On this show, I'm interviewing executives across multiple sectors to find out how the balance between standardization and personalization can exist. Eric, thank you so much for being with us today. We greatly appreciate your support.
Thank you for having me, Glenn.
No, it's my pleasure. So, Eric, you have this simple philosophy that you bring to every opportunity, and I'll quote, "Meet people where they are and keep the experience effortless and sticky." Everything that needs to get accomplished through process and technology should feel like an experience that each person buys into and they can feel and resonate with it at a level that means something special to them. So, Eric,
Absolutely.
how can you share an example or perhaps a story for our audience that brings this perspective to light, especially during today's age of personalization?
Absolutely. I'd love to. So, whenever I'm looking at a new company to join or really spin up a value proposition for an employee, I look at learning as part of a total compensation package, right? It's not just about base salary. It's not just about your bonus. Those are all great things to have. Money is a good thing to have. Benefits are a good thing to have. But learning opportunities, mentoring opportunities, affiliations that a company belongs to further along people's careers, that's part of a total compensation package as far as I'm concerned. And that's something that everybody should be looking at when they join a company, right? It's not just about the dollar. It's not just about the brand. It's not just about, benefits, et cetera. It's really about also how to propel your career, right? I always say that, when you go into a company, there should be resume items that you're building upon each and every day. If you're just going there to, do one thing and that's it, I guess that's all right. But if you want to really grow your career, if you really want to try to thrive and make sure you're being marketable, and really continue on your own educational path, your own educational journey, that's an important thing. So a couple companies ago, we were having some issues with learning, as I think a lot of companies do. People don't often go to learn; they go to do compliance courses on corporate websites. So what I tried to spin up was something what I called Amazon learning. Right? Everybody likes to go to Amazon. Everybody likes to go buy shoes on Amazon. Everybody likes to get that latest book or digital download or whatnot. And then we all know it, right? Amazon then starts learning your behaviors and your patterns, and it starts recommending stuff. So it says, Eric, I noticed that you like that pair of sneakers. How about this one? And then before long, I've spent a lot of money, which isn't a good thing. But I think there's ways to apply that, and I've done it, to learning, right? There's the technology out there that can create those experiences for you. It can say, hey, Scott, I noticed that, you really enjoy courses on, marine life. I'm just completely making that up. We're going to put you in an aquarium type professional setting, but you really like that. And it says Scott took one course and then, maybe another and another and another. In your traditional setting, in your traditional HR setting, it's a one and done. Scott took a course, transaction, and that was it. That's a fail. In my opinion, that's a fail. We didn't nurture Scott. We didn't meet him where he was at. There was no stickiness there. Scott went in, Scott went out. He's probably not a net promoter of that experience. He probably said, did I get something for the day? Yeah, maybe. Maybe it was like a quick little snippet that, sometimes you can subscribe to on emails where you're getting, quote of the day or, anecdote of the day or what have you. But that's very transactional. And I think learning is something that you can't make transactional or you lose people. You lose almost like a herd type mentality where, you start moving people along and you start having people talk to each other. So what we did was, first of all, is we reduced learning offerings to bite-sized learning because today's day and age, right? I mean, you see all the apps that get spun up all over the place, right? TikTok now, like look at that. Minute, Quibi, what is it, 10 minutes or something like that? Mm-hmm. Everything is highly bite-sized. So the educational offerings we wanted to do needed to be bite-sized. That was step one, all right? We just saw what people were attracted to outside. We weren't even thinking about learning offerings yet. We were thinking about what was happening in the real world and then translating that into the corporate and specifically within the learning setting, right? So we said, okay, we have all these quick hit websites out there. We have the Amazon, what I said, the Amazon experience. How can we kind of all bow tie this together? How can we bring it all together? So what we did was we created first a whole bunch of learning content providers. And the criteria to make it in was you had to have short digestible content that was impactful, that felt fresh and relevant. Not like your traditional, courses where you have a person droning on and then you had to take a course at the end or a couple questions at the end and you put, your fancy certificate and then you're done. That was not what this was about. This was about landing content that was consumable. Next up, after we did that, is we kind of created competency models and learning competency models specifically, right? So if you wanted to do that, if Scott wanted to do a whole marine life trajectory, he was going to be able to do that, right? He was going to be able to now get that fed to him, all by triggering off on one course, right? So we're going to say you just arbitrarily clicked on that one course on marine biology, right? Then all of a sudden what it's going to do is it's going to start serving up other content for you that's very similar and also very digestible. And then not only is it going to say that, but it's just going to say, hey, Scott, would you want us to put that in like a learning plan for you and put some like guardrails around it? Like, is this something you're looking to do right now or later? And then almost have a drip campaign after that. Hey, Scott, we noticed you haven't checked into the learning platform in a little bit. Is everything all right? Any new content or whatnot? So it made it very personable. It made it feel like everybody had kind of a learning experience all to themselves. And it's based on rapid content, quick content that's very digestible, as well as plans that get created in that kind of Amazon model, right? It's like, we know Eric likes the sneakers. We're going to, show him a couple more and hope he buys them. So it's the same exact application applied to learning. We had a huge uptick in learning, which was pretty cool. That's rewarding.
That's awesome.
It's amazing.
So I love the model. I love the accomplishment, this new way of thinking that you brought to the organization and were influential in making happen. But you're talking about learning in the age of personalization when most organizations, and we're talking well in excess of 90, 97%. What you just described is a hopeful reality.
Yes.
How do we move organizations' learning strategies from standardization to personalization? Now, you gave us an example of, and maybe I should maybe I should change the question a little bit. You've given an example of how to do that, but let's go before that. How do we get those that are in global talent management roles, just like you are, to recognize that the way we manage talent today is radically different than it was just 5 years ago, let alone 10 years ago, but you're still operating with standards of the past. What has to give here?
I'm going to challenge that and say it's even different. What are we? We're in August now, pre-COVID.
True. Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah.
You know what? You know something that's so interesting? You're so right. And you know why you're right? Because corporations and all institutions recognize that it's all about the individual now. And if they don't do something now, they're going to lose top talent. But keep going. But keep going.
And I'm going to get back to the question, but now the talent net, you're not just casting it in, I'm in, the New York vicinity. I'm not just casting my talent net there. I'm now throwing it around the globe, because we're now seeing people that can work, remote wherever. And we're seeing high yields. I mean, I've been keeping up with the trades. People are really embracing this work from home flexibility. And I think they're really showing up because it's giving them that flexibility, and that's going to be a common theme here. Personalization and flexibility to me are very, very akin to one another. They're stepbrothers maybe, or something like that.
Now I think they're first cousins.
Maybe they're first cousins, right?
Yeah,
so
go ahead.
So it's wildly different right now, right? How we're challenging ourselves as corporations to think through that has now become wildly accelerated. I think, so I'm slowly stepping into your question, but I want to kind of emphasize that companies now don't have the luxury of waiting to come up with a policy of work from home, of waiting for employee mass, critical mass to come up and say, we need to do something different. Employers now have to react and anticipate that in advance. Otherwise, they're not creating that value proposition, right? They're not going to be able to start attracting the right people. They're going to lose them. It is now, it's going to be a very, very different market in the coming months as more and more businesses come up online. I think, you're seeing some early, interesting things that are going on in the healthcare. Obviously, that's a big industry right now. I think you're seeing a lot of things going on in the streaming industry with everybody home. That's another big industry right now. People are doing things wildly different than they were, 5 months ago. So I think, leading into the question, Glenn, it's really starting to figure out what you want to make your employee value proposition. How are you going to meet employees where they're at in order to attract them? And there's definitely a little bit of branding there as well, right? Obviously, it gets to that.
Sure.
You need to figure out, what are your pillars? Like what's kind of your tenets that you have to stand by and are willing to embrace to kind of figure out this new workforce?
So Eric, if I'm someone, one of our audience members is thinking right now, Eric, give me 2 or 3 tips. What does that mean? What would you give them? Just what comes right off the top of your head?
Right off the top of my head, you got to be nimble. If you're not nimble and you're caught up with all this red tape of corporate bureaucracy, excuse me, it's a long word, you're done. You're done. And if you can't acknowledge that your employees need to nurture and feed one another, you're also done.
Elaborate on that.
So your talent that's coming in should also feed off of the talent that's existing, and vice versa, right? Mm-hmm. If you're not creating that ecosystem where you're having ideas shared around and freely, where people are allowed, freely to speak, and then you're encouraging that, and your leadership is pressing that message, not forcing it, but having that happen organically, that's a miss. That's a miss.
You need open dialogue, especially right now. Case in point, we're all on a Zoom call together, right? If we're not freely conversing here, we're all going to walk away with this from different messages, different thoughts. Each of us is processing different thought patterns right now. If we can align somewhat and kind of feed off of each other's ideas, riff off of each other's ideas, then you're going to have something a lot special, more special than what you started off with. So I think, nimble is definitely one. And that talks about kind of this little round robin right now. We're riffing off ideas and then also just feeding off of one another. Right? I've seen, and I've worked at companies that have meant well, that have had the best of intentions, right? But that can't get out of their own way. And it's too hierarchical, right? Can I speak to the CHRO? Or do I have to go through you and you and you before I can do that? Can't have that anymore. It's just not going to work. So that would be my immediate response. I know it's a long-winded response. Sometimes I go off on little tangents here. HR is definitely something I'm passionate about, but you really have to flex to, the ever-changing workforce. If you get stuck, your company will get stuck, right? Employees feed the company then feeds the results or the product.
So Eric, this is great. And I know that our audience is excited to hear what you have to say at the summit on October 29th. But let me address a couple of things that you just brought up. And again, just some reactions.
Sure.
How do you define what talent management means? And the reason I'm asking you what I hope seems to be like a very fundamental question, I actually don't believe that there's a lot of consensus around what that term means.
No.
So first of all, in your opinion, what should it mean?
So let me just react to something I like to do a lot, and maybe this is a fun exercise to do.
Yeah.
I call it the Post-it note challenge. Everybody gets a Post-it note. Everybody gets a word, and they say, I'll tell them, define it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I guarantee if each one of us had a Post-it note, each one of us would write something different on talent management. It could be potentially directionally the same, but I guarantee everybody writes something different there, right? What does success mean? Guarantee the same exact thing. What does talent acquisition mean? All write a different thing. Talent acquisition means recruiting. No, it means, nurturing talent. It means, sourcing and pipelining the best talent that's out there. No, it just means making a hire. Okay. So talent management to me is soup to nuts, making sure a person is equipped with what they need to do to be not just successful, but hyper successful in a role that they play. Anything less than that is not acceptable to me. You need to wrap people around with so much support that they have armed, within their toolkit, ways to do their job more effectively. You're going to have people that learn at different paces. You're going to have people that move at different paces. I often get into big debates, or I shouldn't say debates, but, and this is another drifting moment, but I'm going to bring it back.
No, go ahead.
I was running a performance management program back in the day, and it was hard getting people bought into it. They had been, your traditional once a year rating. Then they've seen other people where it's not rated at all. Then they've seen other people, well, I just get the same rating over and over and over again, and nothing happens. And what I needed to try to do was flip it around to say, let's unpack that, right? Let's unpack why you're feeling like if you get the same exact, rating every single time, you're feeling down on yourself, you're feeling like you're not going to advance, and all that stuff. Now, tucked in my back pocket, I had a whole bunch of statistics that said people that were just, scoring, or being evaluated as just being good, solid contributors, guess what? They were getting promoted. But that being promoted. So what a miss. What a miss. So there's the talent management piece on the person, right? Mm-hmm. Take charge of your career, right? Really start driving that forward and making sure that If you don't have the resources around you, that you find them, that you look for them, that you actively look for them. But then we have it as a responsibility as talent management professionals to really shine a light on that. We need to shine a light on everything that a company does that helps benefit a person and makes them feel empowered in their career. So what happened when I told them that? One is it was utter silence. Then it was utter disbelief. Then I showed them the metrics. And now I said, forget about all this. I guarantee, because then there came a lull where they said, well, I'm just not recognized. I'm not doing anything. I said, that's not true. And I went around the table. There was about 30 people there. And I said, who wants to volunteer first? Who wants to go first? And one gentleman said, I just run every day. I run payroll every day. And I said, God bless you, because payroll is an unforgiving thing. It's you don't hear any noise until you get something wrong. But I said, anything ever go wrong? Because I've worked in payroll before. Ever go wrong? Oh, yeah. What went wrong? We almost overpaid somebody by $500,000. I'm like, well, that's a lot. No, what did you do? How did you avoid that? Because you said almost. You didn't say you did. You said you almost. Well, what I did was I ran my checks and balances against the payroll, and turns out I was able to spot it, and we were able to pull back on the payroll before it went out to the bank. I said, so you were a superhero that day. Did you get acknowledged for it? No. It's just what I said. Okay, so there's two flaws there. One is you need to amplify that, right? And two is the fact that you didn't feel great about doing that, right? And that you differentiated yourself that day. I guarantee if you look back, you've differentiated yourselves on other days. And now all of a sudden the crowd, there's like whispering to neighbors and stuff like that. Oh yeah, there was a major outage in one of the servers or blah, 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 blah. And I was able to fix that. And then I wrote down a playbook as to what happens if that ever happens again. And there was like all these little rumblings and stuff like that. And so now I said, let's revisit this. And now it's a much different story. Now people all of a sudden started saying, you know what? I can get this to work for me, I think. And it was like an aha moment for everybody in that room where they said, you know what? I can actually, one, there's acknowledgement from management. So the talent management aspect of, from an employer to employee. But then all of a sudden the employee to the employer, oh my goodness, I got to talk to people about that. Why didn't I? With $500,000 almost went out the door, but I saved that. So that was a pride thing, right? So now we have, it's a bidirectional thing, right? It gets back to kind of that effortless, that stickiness where now people are kind of seeing the benefits of what they're doing, and they shouldn't feel like I'm just going to work every day and I'm not getting acknowledged. Because I guarantee, I'll bet a paycheck on it. You did something magical at least once during the year. Everybody. I don't care who you are. I don't care what role, from the most entry person from an intern, right all the way up to the top. Guarantee you did something magical at least once, one point during the year.
You know what's incredible about that story is there are more magical moments that we don't ever even find out about. And this is where leadership needs to really step in. I mean, we're at a time right now where there are more people delivering these kind of moments, and we don't know about them. Why? Because we don't take the time to know and to see our own employees.
Yep. And guess what? That erodes confidence in the organization.
Yep.
Confidence in the leadership, and it just feels bad, right? It just feels bad.
So let me do this really quick on that note, because I think it's a good segue. And then Scott, we're going to come here to you in just a moment.
All right.
Here's an example, real quote from a Fortune 20 leader who said this.
Sure.
And I just want you to react to this because this is in line with what you're talking about. Sure. I practiced all of our values. All of my performance ratings were high to very high, based upon how the company wanted me to work. I emulated my work and my style based on 5 other senior executives in the organization. I did everything they wanted me to do. but I'm still not being considered for the promotion.
Yep.
Unpack this for us.
So one is you've created a robot worker with no thought diversity. So that's strike one, if I'm being honest, right?
Well, by the way, you're being super honest of the grand majority of workforce populations today, but please continue.
Yeah. So you've created a robot worker that's not empowered whatsoever. They've been kind of brainwashed into thinking that I need to live these values, which you do, right? I mean, I always say how you live values is 50% of how you're showing up in an organization, and 50% is what you deliver. How you deliver something is just as important as the delivery itself. But you've created a robot worker, so I applaud the person or the program for that. No diversity, no thought leadership or anything like that. You've just pre-programmed your whole population to think like that. And now, after showing that robot that, that's how you get to work, then you don't reward them with anything. Now, listen, spending this long in HR, and there's plenty more people that have a lot more tenure than I do in the space. But I can see the reactions. I know the reactions. People do always expect a promotion when you're mimicking everything, and when you're exceeding expectations sometimes. And sometimes there's just let's be real. Like sometimes there's just not that that spot. But that being said, you need to at least provide a person with that trajectory to say, okay, you've hit everything. You've hit on everything. You've lived our values. You've delivered on everything. Here's, reward them with assignments that are outside of their remit. If they're showing and embodying so many values, shake up another piece of the organization, right? I get back to what I was saying initially, right, Glenn? Like I said, it's always about building the resume, right? Building the resume, building the experiences. So if you can't give a person either financial rewards or promotion rewards, give them the reward of saying, you know what? You've outperformed people here. What about going over to finance, right? What about going over to distribution or sales? Like we just like how you're thinking here and what you're showing up and how you're bringing your values to the table and your skills and your delivery. Have you ever thought about that? Because now what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, you know what? I can't do anything for this person right now except potentially leverage that person selfishly, right? So now it's the employer-employee debate. Employer to shake up an area potentially that's struggling, that maybe needs a little bit of thought diversity. And I'm a big proponent of thought diversity. I think you should be kind of rotating in and out people. I mean, there's consistency you need, but I think you should be rotating out certain people in and out all the time. You have to be shaking up things or you're not going to move forward.
So Eric, let me just jump in and say, It's interesting what you said, and I understood the context in which you were saying it. But see, we've been rewarding people for mimicking much too long.
Absolutely.
And that's the standardization trap. While in the age of personalization, we should be rewarding individuals for the distinction
that's right.
Bring, which, by the way, goes back to the story that you talked about in the accounting department. But moving people to another department, is that the role? And I know there'll be debate for this.
Oh yeah.
But I'd love for you to give me your thoughts. Whose responsibility is it? Is it the department leaders, or is it the talent management executive that needs to intervene here? Who's responsible?
I actually think it's a three-way tie. Maybe not three-way. I think talent management needs to talk to the business, right? They need to understand the needs of the business and they need to understand what's going on out there. They need to understand what's working, what's not working. So there's a degree of responsibility. And whether you're partnering with business partners to help broker those conversations or going directly to the businesses themselves, that needs to be happening. That partnership needs to be happening. Then there's also, I believe, there is a degree of responsibility on the employee, right? The employee want to do this. They have to want to show that, hey, you know what? I think this is an amazing experience. I've batted it out of the park in my current role. I think I could disrupt stuff over there. But I do, Glenn, I see it as there needs to be a joint accountability
talent management, and again, whether they're working with the HR business partners who are liaisoning with the business or going direct to those managers themselves, there needs to be a give and take. And this is where you kind of get into, your traditional succession planning or
right,
high potentials and all that stuff. So there's a degree to still fall into that non-personalization trap. You have to basically say, okay, let's recognize, I'll say, different performers. Not necessarily your high performers all the time, you're different performers. People that have done something differently that I didn't expect them to do, that benefited not only the department, but maybe even outstretched beyond that. I think we need to think of things like that. If you get trapped in that hypo 9-box model, all your traditional stuff, which, by the way, has, it has a piece in certain companies, or it has a piece as people are starting to build it out. I'm not a fan of any of it. I think there's a way that you can walk through a program that doesn't need to necessarily rely on that, but relies on observations of the talent, what you're seeing. Now, that requires a heck of a lot more work and effort, but I can almost guarantee you're going to get out more from that than you would from a traditional 9-box or performance management rating system, or just your traditional hypo where you're calibrating everybody against one another. That feels very robotic. Versus,
well, Eric, it seems to me as if you're well on your way of creating at least a strong framework of what that next model looks like. And by the way, I love this thought of the different performer. I think there'd be a lot of people that would jump all over that. Scott, Scott, we need you back in the conversation.
I've been here the whole time, and I got plenty of questions and observations. But I'm going to start with one, because the one I want to start with, I want us to kind of do a thought experiment a little bit and kind of put ourselves into a different position. I think we're doing a really fun job, and it's an exciting job for me to listen in about how we're seeing personalization and the employee through personalization from a top-down view. We're essentially looking bottom up, but we're still doing it from a strangely top-down perspective. And that's not a problem, because perspectives, we need as many as possible. So let's throw another one in there. Let's throw it in all of these same ideas. Let's throw in the actual employee's position. And let's not talk about somebody that's going to end up in a boardroom. Let's talk about one of our employees that will probably be a great long-term employee.
Absolutely.
I'm thinking I can simplify this. So this is the employee's point of view. And what do you think, Eric? So I'm going to take you back to, ironically, a standardized test thing, right?
Oh boy. All right, let's do it.
Right? So a robot worker is to job security as the personalization styled work is to what? And let me just reiterate why I want that answer, why I want to think about it together. And Glenn, maybe we need to hear from you too. What I'm saying is that from a point of view of somebody who is an employee that really isn't looking, I want to learn, I want to grow, but I don't really have intentions of becoming the next CFO or CEO or even a middle-level manager. I just want my job so I can take care of my kid, because that's what's most important. So that's my position. So when I look at what's out there, and when I look at what's out there right now in terms of the economy and unemployment, when I see robot work, I know that that's job security. If I can just deliver on point what they need and what they measure me by, the reason I'm not going to step out of my lane is because I might lose the entire lane. So robot work is to job security, as personalization work is to...
Well, I'll call it out right now, risk. But I've had this... It's
Turn
funny.
it upside down, man.
By the way, Scott, I love your backdrop. It's very cool. I've been studying it the whole time.
Thanks, dude. It's all Mali, West Africa.
So I think you hit it right on the head, right? And that's why I responded with risk. Because the minute I start personalizing myself and differentiating myself, I'm taking a risk, positive or negative. That's what that blueprint that you laid out, that worker, where, I'm equating, the robotic work to that job security. Absolutely. Anecdotally, that whole session that I was alluding to before, where, by the way, we were all sitting around in almost a round table circle. We had chairs around, because I don't like talking out. I like talking within. They were all that blueprint. They were actually all like that. They did not want to lose their job, Scott, at all.
Yeah.
not, they were, you know, and I'm not knocking this at all. A lot of them were very long tenured employees. They did not want to rock the boat, which is why I wanted to tease out the time that they did it anyway.
Okay.
But acknowledged it, including themselves.
Oh.
Right? So that's tying it back. So if you can kind of extract those moments out from people, you start to say to them, it's all right if I shine a light on some work that I've done that maybe disrupted things in a good way or a bad way, because you know what? The show continued and I'm still here. But I made an impact that day. I didn't make an impact that day. I did not overpay somebody by $500,000. I, did create a report that, whatever, I saved the servers from crashing. That's, robotic work, but amplified, right? My day job is to come in and flip the server switch every single day. But then once I flip it and it doesn't go up, what do? Well, I know what's going on. I've been doing this for 25 years. I triaged it. I figured out what was going wrong, with it, and isolated that out and did it. But then I forgot about it. Why? Because I don't want anybody to know about it. Because I want to be in that kind of, that thing. Because I want job security. I don't want to know. Nobody should know that the server went down. Everybody should just know that everything is all good. But you know what? Guarantee at some point that person felt a little lousy about what they did.
No question. In fact,
not vocalizing it.
So Scott, really quick, I need to ask this question because I'm very curious about how Eric is going to respond. In fact, this may add another dimension to where you're going with this, Scott, and I'll keep this brief.
Yeah.
For the robot employee, there is risk.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I get that.
Let me hear.
But something happened in May. The murder of George Floyd and the veil, the corporate veil against, and I'm saying against because on average, that's how the corporate construct was designed. It wasn't designed to embrace individuality. So now here we are. Is personalization risk, or is this now the moment that everyone's been waiting for to take it from risk to opportunity?
This is the moment that we've all been waiting for, that we can all screw up real fast.
Yep.
Don't embrace it and make it sticky and make it stick, because otherwise it's just another blip. The cycle will continue. We'll have another cataclysmic event. It'll be another shine the light on this for a minute, and then we'll keep on getting into this big circle again. Now is the time, and I think, sadly enough, with everything that's going on in the world right now, I think this is the moment where there is that tipping point. I think we've reached that tipping point. Again, just talking with peers out there, in different companies, there is this kind of static in the air right now that we can no longer go back to how we were. Pre-George Floyd, pre-COVID, it can't work anymore. It is not a sustainable approach, and it's not right for any of the employees that exist with us or that we're trying to attract.
So Eric, let me throw a follow-up to that, and I want to talk about from biology to culture. All right?
Sure.
So biologically, what I do when I'm thinking about, say, a grand opportunity like this for a species, as an anthropologist, I like to think of the long term. So I'm going to take it to a little bit wider than our species, and I'm going to bring in the other apes. And something that I find remarkable when I read about not the science that the other apes helped us to discover, but literally the personal experience of the apes themselves, the individual ape and what happened to them in their life trajectory as they became one of our most important and influential contributors to science. Now, here's the deal. I know biologically that a lot of times when there was the opportunity to actually take the ape, go back to, say, Central Africa, open up the cage and say, thank you, buddy, have a good retirement, that the ape doesn't leave, man. You have to prod it. You have to literally force it to go away. It doesn't want to. That's our biology. That doesn't change quickly. That goes back millions and millions of years, right? 63 plus for primates in general.
Absolutely.
So the deal, though, is I'm going to throw sort of what gives me hope out there. And I'd love to hear your response from an HR point of view, right? So for me, the excitement is that our biology is going to make us withdraw in this crisis. Our biology is going to make us not want to respect different ways of looking, being, and seeing in the world. Our biology is going to push us apart. However, one thing that we're discovering is that we do have, besides our biological DNA, we do have what I'll call cultural DNA, which are our words and our ideas that you aren't born with, but simply because we can talk like this, we can exchange it and spread it out in ways that biology would take centuries, if not millennia, to distribute. Yes. So I'm thinking that there's some cultural DNA we can put to work here to get people, or at least not to get people out of the cage, but to get people to want to get out of the cage in the first place. What's the cultural DNA I'm looking for, man?
Oh boy.
That's not even the $1 million question. That's
hey man, I can tell it. You talked about magical moments, man, and you gave me a few of them already in the beginning of your talk today, especially when you were taking, you're an HR guy, you've done all kinds, I mean, your accomplishments are amazing. And when I got to talk to you the very first time, the first thing that you got to do, right, in this conversation was you threw out an example that went straight, you personalized it. You put it to me, you put it to marine biology, which I do love, by the way, and right, and you put it into education. You didn't have to go there, but you did. You've got cultural DNA tricks that I think are so inherent that you don't think that other people don't have those. So share some cultural DNA tricks about getting apes out of cages.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I love the whole example. And in fact, one of my favorite artists, Peter Gabriel, actually played instruments with bonobo apes, and he actually learned from them, and they learned from him. So I'm gonna actually go off of that through no.
I'm not even trying to personalize. I'm just actually trying to just go off of the example, just because I love it, and I love Peter Gabriel. So that's a little plug. So I think you really do need to kind of observe people and observe how you're going to communicate with them, and observe how you can really kind of broker that exchange with one another to kind of facilitate something that's different, right? Every interaction is different. How I interact with my friends is definitely different than how I interact with my children. And my children they're my grounding. They keep me very, very grounded. But even within them, every single one of them, there's a troublemaker. There's the princess that will help out daddy no matter what. There's my son who will challenge me to push me further. And then there's my other daughter that shows me creativity abound. I'm observing them. We need to get it going back and forth, right? It's funny. This morning, I was looking at an article that was talking about having performance reviews with your kids, and I really laughed. I really did. But I'm kind of like trying to draw off of that cultural DNA. I think it really has to go both ways. When you're talking to people, let the conversation, not be so structured where people are so rigid, where they're not going to feel free to have this thought diversity. I mean, we're seeing all this, censorship that goes on right now, where, news media blasting out, what their message is, right? And all that stuff. I've actually challenged people to say, turn off the news and just start communicating with people and see where they're at. Because if you actually start growing that organically, I don't know, as you said, Scott, right? This is very, very, inherent in how we've evolved. But I think you do have an opportunity, or a better opportunity, to figure things out, kind of talking in that organic nature, to start, again, getting the person out of the cage, to start thinking, okay, well, maybe if I'm having a conversation, one, they're respecting my ideas. Wow, that's cool. Yeah. They're really listening to me. That's cool. And I'm picking up on some of their stuff. So now I'm starting to create a little bit of a bond. And if you do that enough, I think you start, who knows how long that's going to take. I think quite some time. But I think if you do that enough, you start bringing people out, and you start having that diversity of thought. that personalization of thought, where you're starting to create different mindsets, different ideas, and then hopefully that translates into society. Forget about the company for a minute.
Yeah.
But hopefully
Scott,
that's translating into society.
I'm sorry, Eric. When I hear what you just said, which was so good, Eric, standardization has essentially created apes that feel comfortable in cages. In other words, we're so accustomed to be put in boxes, and that's where our safety comes from. But in today's age of personalization, that's not enough. In fact, it's a detriment to any organization and to any culture that promotes that, because the level of crises that we're all experiencing in real time today demands our individuality. It demands that we have those conversations. But,
absolutely.
But think about what you just said. I mean, as you were talking, I was trying to process this. And think about how long it's going to take for us to have that two-way dialogue to get us where we all want to be. Because standardization has bottled us up to the point where we're conditioned to feel that, number one, we can't have those real conversations. And then if we do, it does put us at risk rather than opportunity. So here's the question. How do we accelerate it to get from A to Z, let's say in 2 months rather than 2 years? Because we don't have 2 years, Eric.
Yep. I think you have everybody say, it's okay to be scared.
It's okay to be vulnerable, right? You hear, the expression safety in numbers, right? I think that's been driven in, and that kind of creates that mindset, right? That I do my job, I'm going to come in and get a paycheck, safety in numbers, right? I'm doing repetitive tasks, I'm doing everything my peers are doing, safety in numbers. But if you kind of explode that and say, you know what, it's okay to feel vulnerable. I think we all are. I'm certainly feeling vulnerable right now in the world.
Me too.
And I'm happy to say that. That's, I think, step one, right? Step one is acknowledging as an employee or as a person, as a human, the human condition, I am vulnerable. And having those conversations, right? I think, and I'll save this for another time, but I think mental health is a very big thing that's untouched right now. And I think, and I think that's really, really sad. And that's something that means a lot to me right now. And that leads to some really, really bad consequences by having a person not allowed to say or not feel that they're allowed to say that they're vulnerable. And likewise, not having a company or a net around them or a circle of people that says it's okay to feel vulnerable. So I'm just tying in that mental health thing, because it just is something that's very personal to me. But I think it's saying we are vulnerable, but we need to do something about it. Now.
And so it's interesting, Eric, and Scott, please just jump in at any time if I've disrupted any flow here. But let me point out one thing, and I think our audience has heard me say this before, but I'd love for you to get a reaction from you, Eric, that you know what is not the most important thing anymore in the workplace? It's not employee engagement. It's actually whether or not when we show up to work, whether we're doing it from the comfort of our homes or an office building, that we're part of a safe environment where we're not judged as individuals. And I share that because that's how people have felt for years. Kind of goes back to why the gentleman that you were speaking to in the accounting department didn't say anything when he had a magic moment. My point is, it seems to me that we're in the behavior change business today.
We are. And great word.
And I share that with you because don't the rules of engagement, don't the rules of or the standards of talent management change? Even from the types of talent that we're really trying to look for in our organization. In other words, if we're looking for a marketing executive, are we looking for one that's been a marketing executive for 25 plus years? Or do they have a particular talent that can contribute to the organization's marketing needs? So, I mean, this is an example of behavior change, right? Rather than look at the resume, we're looking at the individual that can help us mobilize a particular need forward. So I threw a lot at you. You're more than capable of handling that.
Oh, man.
But please react, because these are the big issues that people are thinking about, but do not dare to talk about.
Wow, there's a lot.
But is it, or is it the same thing, just packaged in different ways?
I think right now we're just we're repackaging still. Yeah. I think we're still repackaging, but I think I've seen enough right now that we're now starting to unpackage a little bit.
Okay.
I've seen companies right now forced. I think what we're going to see here is the acceleration is going to be more rapid. It's out of necessity. It's not because necessarily the company wants to anymore, which is sad, but they have to. We have to get on Zoom calls now because of social distancing. We have to get on Zoom calls now because we have to keep businesses going or universities going, et cetera. So I think the rate of change, this is what I was saying before. I think this is a magical moment, and we have to not screw it up as humans. Is we're all talking the same thing, right? We know we have to personalize the experience for all of humanity, and specifically within the workforce, right? We know we have to do that. We keep on saying we know we have to do that, but we keep on just punting. We kick the can down the road, so to speak. Now we're forced to, we can't do that anymore. I can't kick the can down the road. I need my people to learn, whether it be taking educational curriculum, et cetera, to keep up with, with stuff that's going on out there. But then I also want them to feel empowered at a distance, right? I want to make sure that Eric is feeling good at his home. Now, I think there's still a bit of time to get there, but certainly the rate of change, I don't think we're looking at a 2-year runway anymore. I don't think we're kicking the can down the road. Some people may, and that's sad. I don't think we're kicking the can down the road, though, in the majority of companies anymore. I don't think they can afford that. I think now when you're sourcing talent from across the globe, now you're dealing with cultural differences that you didn't have necessarily before. So now how am I going to adapt to them, right? So now your personalization isn't just like within my organization. Now you're talking about actually how people were born, raised, grew up. You're talking about differences there. So our learning curves as organizations have to accelerate quite rapidly right now, or we will go the way of the dinosaur, right? We absolutely will as corporations. And we'll lose talent. It'll erode out. And that's for future talent. And then, current talent, I'm going to feel completely isolated. If I'm not having these calls, my days literally consist of Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting. Why? Because I want to see the person. If I can't touch them, if I can't, give them a hug or shake their hand or be physically, close to them, I need to see them. And I think a lot of leaders are waking up to that. And some people are really embracing it. Yep. To say, hey, this is working, but now we can't rest on that, because otherwise we're just, again, creating a robot. Hey, I'm going to log into a Zoom. Hey, I'm going to give a report. Hey, this is that, blah, 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 blah. We need to kind of seize this and amplify out what people are doing, how they're operating differently. I was doing that just today is how are people operating within this new landscape? What do people need that we're missing right now? I'm telling people within my little team, how could we work differently? What's working well? Because I don't certainly profess to know how everything works perfectly. I have my own thoughts. I have strong viewpoints. I would like to think I have a high EQ, but I don't know what you're thinking. I don't know what Scott is thinking. I don't know what Glenn is thinking right now. I hope it's not Eric's boring us to death. But I think I think there was a lot to unpack there, Glenn. I think, one, we don't have the luxury of time anymore in this new world, because at the end of the day, companies want to see results. So that aside, that's going to start forcing some of this new talent management design. And I think the embracement of that, and hopefully the employee will see it.
I'm gonna offer up based on what you said, Glenn, and what you said, Eric, and multiple points of the conversation today. And it's an immodest proposal. I'm going to suggest that every single boardroom across the land immediately, and this is not for me, but I'm just saying they immediately need to hire an anthropologist to be a director of anthropology for the boardroom, right? Ultimately, the reason why we need a director of anthropology is because, Glenn, you're throwing the question to Eric saying, what do we do? Because we're in behavior change. So how are we going to do this behavior change for the ape problem? And it's a really tough one to deal with. But one of the things that we already automatically do when we start talking about this exact question structurally from HR or even on a species level, right, is that we go back to the previous frame and expect it to meet us there and then carry it further. We need to disengage. The deal is anthropology as a discipline itself, and anthropologists who are trained in the 4 fields of anthropology literally have our power comes from the fact that we don't just study the biology of humanity and think that we have the answers, because behavior change is more than biology. But it's not that we just threw in culture and have now bio DNA and cultural DNA.
That's right.
But you know what we also do? Our third one, it's also going to be language, linguistics. So let's do some archaeology on that linguistics to make sure that every term we're using is putting us forward or at least opening doors rather than excluding people. And then fourth, the last one, and perhaps most important for us in many ways right now today, is archaeology, and in particularly digging up the past. We need to dig up the past. We need to put that right next to the language that we're using and understand the relationship between our past and the language we're using today to get out of the cage, because the language we're using today will not get us out of the cage. It's the keys, right? And then we also can expect culture and culture changes in a corporate boardroom or even in a corporate structure. We can expect that culture can change, and we can change it very quickly. But you know what doesn't change? Not very quickly at all. It's our biology. So we need to be rooted in that as well to understand where we're coming from in terms of the way that we're processing our consciousness, right? Stress levels, how breathing and the way that you breathe can impact the way that you're healing or not, right?
Absolutely.
The bottom line, what I'm saying, if I can sum this up more easily and then just I'll back off, and that's the last word of the day. This is it. You need to hire that anthropologist in your boardroom. Why? Because all those other things are said by bringing these things together that are behavior change. If you need behavior change, you need all 4 of those things. But if we need to sell it quickly, because we kind of do with our little digestible tidbits of knowledge, here it is. The reason you bring in the anthropologist is because he will teach us that vulnerability is actually power. And the reason why vulnerability is power is because specifically, vulnerability not only reveres, but it demands interconnectivity. And if that's too complicated for anybody, they can just use the word love. If you need a metric for your data analytics department to understand whether what they're doing is good for the customer, for the society, or for their employee, did it spread love? And if the answer is no, or if the answer is I don't know, then we're off track. Dropping the mic, I'm out.
Boom!
I love that.
I love it. Go ahead, Eric.
I mean, that was beautiful. I couldn't agree more.
I think that absolutely is missing right now. It's a big missing part. We're not honoring any of what you just said, Scott. At least in traditional corporate America, I don't see it there. I see it in spurts. But in order to do it, you need that consistency. You need that consistency in order to do it. You need that drip campaign, that steady drumbeat, in order to do what you were just saying to do. Because that's a beautiful thing, what you just said. How you're measuring KPIs, like out of love, or if it's not, then you're missing something. Then we're not aligned. We're not all on the same page. We're not we're not embracing, I'll always keep getting back to it, thought diversity. And yes, we learn a lot from our past, and we should definitely exploit that and not tend to repeat it. And I think in corporate America for many, many years now, we're repeaters. Yeah. Maybe we inch up a little bit, but we're predominantly repeaters, which is why I love the boardroom analogy, because then, now you're starting to say, okay, how could we advance, right? How could we advance each other and not just, consistently live in this cycle of just doing the same thing over and over and over again and just rebranding it something different. It's talent management today, or it's performance management tomorrow. It's talent of the people, you're just repackaging things. So I really love that. I really love that. And that's going to get me thinking tonight.
Well,
awesome.
Well, so as we kind of wrap this up now, and maybe I'm just repackaging, but I'm not so sure, is if we're going to find that love in each other and that respect, then we need to take the time to get to know and see one another as individuals. We need to be able to embrace our individual capacities, which I believe oftentimes are unknown. I mean, it took you to have to speak to the gentleman in the accounting department what kind of capacity he had. And so what you've really done for us today, Eric, which I'm extraordinarily appreciative of, without saying it directly, but it was clearly implied, being a leader in today's age of personalization, it's a whole other different level of responsibility. It's one that requires us to really be in touch with the people that we lead and to recognize that we just don't have all the answers anymore. And the truth is we never really did. And that our roles as leaders is more about getting to know the people that we lead so that they can teach us how to best lead them to get to our desired outcome. In other words, we need to be more co-design. We have to have a mentality of co-design rather than one that says, if I win, you lose. So, Eric, you have been extraordinary today.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, Glenn.
No, you're quick and you know your stuff. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of organizations and leaders who are going to hear this, our time with you today, and they're going to benefit immensely from it. So thank you, Eric. Any closing comments? Oh no, of course we're going to.
I would just love to close on this one statement. It's very simple. It's very short. Everybody, I do believe this. Everybody is special and does something special. Everybody has a superpower. It's understanding what that is and figuring it out. And you may not figure it out until you're 100. You're going to figure it out at some point, or you may figure it out, right out of the womb. Somebody's going to figure it out, but it's also making sure that you're exploiting that and you're sharing that with others, because somebody is going to key in on that.
That's it. I mean, in many respects, talent management has to do with the discovery of talent.
That's right.
And that is clearly the role of this broader responsibility that we have as leaders. So Scott, last minute or closing comments, even though you've already dropped the mic.
I know that was tough to beat, Scott.
Spread love.
I love
it.
Well, on that note, I'd like to thank you, Scott, and thank you, Eric. And as we always close our shows, when you lead in the age of personalization, you will see things that others don't. Do what others won't, and keep pushing when prudence says quit. Thanks again, Eric. We greatly appreciate your time.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to Personalization Outbreak. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss a show. If you enjoyed the content, visit ageofpersonalization.com to check out our free streaming video series and learn how to get involved in the movement. I'm Glenn Yopes. I wish you a good day, and remember, without strategy, change is merely substitution, not evolution.